This Travis Wayne Goodsell. This one is an LDS Critic one, pertaining to Joseph Smith as a translator. We'll focus on Book of Abraham to cut it shorter. For Mormons, the Book of Abraham is considered, used to be considered translation from the Egyptian papyri that came to Joseph Smith in 1835, and he worked on it for several years. He was constantly thrown in jail. People did not like him, and there was a coup within Mormonism to oust him, and those are other topics that I've gone over in other cases, in other places. Oh, somebody's knocking. Hold on. Okay, I'm back. The church has always led everybody to believe that Joseph Smith translated the text on the papyri, and that that's the text of the Book of Abraham, and that the explanations for the facsimiles were his translation of the facsimiles. And so Egyptologists come along when the papyri is found in the Metropolitan Museum in New York, and is returned to the Brighamite Church rather than the legal successors, the Community of Christ, which originally was the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That was through Joseph Smith III, and that's because the Brighamite Church has the Book of Abraham still with the facsimiles, and so when it came out, Egyptologists, were given access to it. And the interesting thing is that David O. McKay, who was the Mormon prophet, the president of the church, who's supposed to have the gift of or the key of the priesthood of translation, didn't bother to make a translation, and that's being nice to him. He passed it off to Hugh Nibley, who was at BYU, and Hugh Nibley tried working on it, and eventually they had to get other Egyptologists to examine it as well. And so Egyptologists come out and say, well, we can't find Abraham anywhere in the text. Not there. So therefore Joseph Smith was wrong, and I don't know what he was thinking. And so the church is sort of devastated by that, and downplay it, because that's what you do when you're getting shamed on something that you should have had knowledge of, but because you usurped the church and didn't have a clue. Yeah, so again, other videos, other stories, other stuff, and so the church now, on their website, under translation and historicity of the Book of Abraham, and of course the author is linguistically attached to John Gee, who does not know Egyptian, even though he is the best that Mormons have, since I no longer affiliate. He said that Joseph Smith did not translate, doesn't know how to translate, and therefore what he did was spiritual revelation. So screw science. We're going into the God realm to justify things. And so that's also what they do with the Book of Mormon. And screw science, geology, and animal husbandry, and biology, and geography, and all those other sciences. Screw all them. It's all spiritual revelation. And so that's why they're allowing the looking into a hat with rocks in it, although they say it's just one rock. And so even the church does not recognize the Book of Abraham as a translation anymore. And yet you'll still hear Mormons, even the young rising generation of Mormon apologists who are attending BYU right now and who are posting online, and I don't want to acknowledge them, but they know who they are, and you know who they are if you know who they are also claiming that Joseph Smith was a translator, and they do diversionary discussions. The most popular of diversionary discussions is claiming that the Book of Abraham is authentic. Of course it's authentic. We have the papyri. And so they get all confused and try to confuse other people. And it has nothing to do with authenticity. Egyptology has authenticated the papyri, so we all know it's authentic. But that's not the point, and that's purposely why Mormons will not talk about the point, which is translation. Was it translated correctly? And Egyptologists say it was not a translation of the Egyptian text on the papyri. That's the key. Because if people actually knew the full range of translation from Egyptian, they would have known that Egyptologists are not translating the glyphs. They don't do any translation of any glyphs anywhere in the world. They just don't, because they don't know how to do it. And so all they do say is, well, the text says this, so this seems to relate to the text. And that's as far as they go with it. And no, if you've ever heard a picture is worth 1,000 words, it's the same in Egyptian. It's 1,000 translations. And it all focuses on the main glyph, or the main myth, which really isn't a myth, but that's what Egyptologists call it, of Egypt. That's the core of everything. All knowledge is with this main one of Osiris versus Set versus Horus. That's the key to Egyptian, and understanding Egyptian, and translating Egyptian. And so Egyptologists apparently don't know this, which is strange. The late D.M. Murdoch, she was figuring it out. She still had a ways to go, but she was figuring it out, because she recognized in the Gospels specifically, she didn't do much with the Old Testament other than her book on Moses as a fraud story, which she's wrong. But with the Gospels, she recognized, hey, each of these stories correlate with an Egyptian story. And so she understood that much, but there was a lot more for her to do. And I had been working on, at the same time period, with the Old Testament, making the discoveries with the Torah, connecting to the Egyptian records. So this was being done simultaneously, even though we don't know each other, or didn't know each other. She died of cancer in 2015, I think. So a tragic loss, but that's what Egyptologists don't understand, is that Joseph Smith even says in chapter 1 that he's making a translation from the facsimiles. Specifically facsimile number 1 for chapter 1. And thus, chapter 3, talking about space, all that, that's facsimile number 2. And all through the rest of the book about the creation, also part of facsimile number 2. Guess what? There's facsimile number 3. It's not translated. And so Egyptologists have complained, oh, well, Pharaoh is never a woman. And you just shake your head and go, oh, come on, guys. Seriously? The first female pharaoh was in the Old Kingdom. And then the famous Hatshepsut in the 18th dynasty. And then Cleopatra. You guys know Cleopatra. She's the famous one. And so, yeah, it's absurd for Egyptologists to make those kinds of comments when they should know better. Yes, there are female pharaohs. And so that's significant. But the thing that is not referred to by Mormons with their history or Egyptologists is that the Knights Templar were into Egyptian. And the Knights Templar was the highest rank of the York Freemasons, not to be confused with the Scottish Rite Freemasons. Big difference. And when you do church history, the Smiths were York Freemasons. Ah, there's the connection. Whereas Brigham Young, Scottish Rites. Ah, yeah, so the Seagull Gate, notice that pentagram, that's because of the Scottish Rites. So the Nauvoo Temple, which was built after Joseph died, pentagram. And also associated, it was built on the 1st of May in celebration of the Illuminati founding. More on that as I've gone through in my book on that. Yeah, the big difference, and you have to get it right as to the full understanding of what's going on. And so that's why the Smiths were all into Egyptian, was because of the York Rites with the Knights Templar, who were Friday the 13th, was because the Catholic Church was upset with them and their focus on Egyptian. And so that's why Joseph was doing the facsimiles, a translation of those. So even though he did a explanation, the translation was the text of the facsimiles. He never even touched the text other than to put part of the text from the book of Joseph, or the papyra that he called Joseph, the book of Joseph, which also has a significant part in regards to Ezekiel 37, but he took part of that text to replace the missing portion in facsimile number 2, and so that's crucial. So yeah, that's what everybody misses. And yes, Abraham is a part of it when you understand that, as D.M. Murdoch pointed out, the Jesus stories all come from the Egyptian documents, and they're just giving him the name of Jesus rather than Osiris or Horus because they're mixed with the Gospels. And then with the Old Testament, Abraham. For example, Abraham sacrifices Isaac, and then a ram appears. And multiple translations with that. I've discussed those in my books too, but so if you were to use the Egyptian records to record this in the Bible, you'd have Abraham as Anubis preparing the dead body of his son Isaac, who is Osiris in the Egyptian pictures. And that's how you do it. So, there you go. So Joseph Smith was correct with what he was doing. and technically we have to give credit to him through the Knights Templar, through Freemasonry, for understanding translation of Egyptian that way. But they never developed it, so it was fair game. And now I'm the one, and so that's how it's done.